We've all felt it, right? Anger. It's one of the most powerful emotions we have, and it can totally disrupt our relationships, cloud our judgment, and just harm our well-being. So today, we're going to dive into Thich Nhat Hanh's incredible approach to handling it from his book, Anger, Wisdom for Cooling the Flames. And what's so fascinating is the book's core idea. It teaches that anger isn't some enemy we need to crush or suppress. Instead, it's a signal, something that actually needs our mindful attention and care. Using Buddhist wisdom and really practical techniques, Han shows us a path toward emotional clarity, healing, and ultimately peace. So here's what we're going to get into. First, we'll look at the power of anger itself. Then we'll dig into understanding its roots, check out some techniques for cooling those flames, see how to heal damaged relationships, reframe anger as a teacher, and finally talk about what it means to live a mindful life. Now, this book isn't just about trying to manage anger. It's way deeper than that. It's about really understanding where it comes from, how to transform it into compassion, and how to use mindfulness as a tool for our own emotional resilience. Han's teachings come from Buddhist philosophy, for sure, but they are so universal. They really offer a path to healing for anyone who's ever struggled with anger. Okay, so where does anger actually come from? Han points out that it usually grows out of three very specific mental states. He says anger is often rooted in some kind of misunderstanding or an unmet need. So instead of just reacting on impulse, he encourages us to just pause, breathe, and look at our emotions with real compassion. So what are these states? Han says anger comes from, first, wrong knowing, or basically misunderstanding a situation. Second, obsessive desire. And third, well, anger itself. These three things create a ton of suffering, and that leads to all that emotional turmoil and those strained relationships. And this leads to one of the most beautiful teachings in the whole book, this idea that we should treat our anger like a crying child. You wouldn't ignore or punish a crying child, right? No, you'd acknowledge it, embrace it, and soothe it. And by practicing mindfulness, we can start to see anger as a chance for self-awareness and real transformation. Hung also makes this crucial point about how our emotions are all connected. See, anger doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It's often tangled up with past wounds, with our fears, and with our insecurities. So by working on these deeper layers, we can heal not just our anger, but our overall emotional well-being. All right, so how do we actually do all this? Well, Han gives us several amazing mindfulness-based techniques to manage anger in a really effective way. He breaks it down into 4 key practices. First up, there's mindful breathing and walking. The second is writing letters to help foster understanding. Third, there's compassionate listening. And finally, the big one, transforming anger into compassion. When you actually engage in these practices, you can literally shift your whole perspective and turn anger from something destructive into an opportunity for growth. And then he introduces this beautiful concept of watering the seeds of happiness. He explains that inside each of us, we have seeds of everything, seeds of anger, but also seeds of joy. So by consciously nurturing the positive emotions, through things like gratitude, kindness, and mindfulness, we can actually weaken anger's grip and cultivate more inner peace. We all know anger can really damage relationships. It creates this emotional distance and resentment. Han teaches that the healing really begins with self-awareness and having the willingness to communicate with love. He shows how mindful speech and deep listening can actually mend those broken connections and build mutual understanding. So the absolute key here is presence. Han explains that when we get angry, our first instinct is often to withdraw emotionally, to pull away. And that leaves the people we love feeling abandoned. By practicing mindfulness, we can learn to stay present even when we're angry, and that helps make sure our relationships stay intact. He also talks about the incredible power of forgiveness, really emphasizing that holding on to anger only makes us suffer more. By learning to forgive, and that means forgiving others and ourselves, we can free ourselves from these huge emotional burdens and finally move forward with a clear head. This brings us to a really powerful shift in thinking. Han reframes anger not as some character flaw, but as a teacher. He explains that our anger can show us deeper truths about what we need emotionally, about our past wounds, and about where we have room to grow. So instead of being afraid of anger, we can actually learn from it and use it as a guide toward becoming more self-aware. He also reminds us about the impermanence of emotions. It's so important to remember that anger, just like every other feeling, is temporary. It comes and it goes. Once we really get that, we can avoid getting completely consumed by it, and instead we can just approach it with curiosity and mindfulness. Look, Han's wisdom isn't just theoretical stuff. It's meant to be lived every single day. He encourages all of us to integrate mindfulness into our daily routines, using all those little moments of awareness to cultivate peace. Whether it's through mindful eating, or just conscious breathing, or compassionate communication, these small practices can totally transform our everyday lives. He also highlights just how important community is, explaining that our emotional healing is so often supported by having meaningful relationships. When you surround yourself with people who are understanding and compassionate, it just becomes so much easier to practice mindfulness and build that emotional resilience. So to wrap it all up, Anger, Wisdom for Cooling the Flames is so much more than a book. It's really a guide to emotional healing and mindful living. Thich Nhat Hanh's wisdom offers this gentle but incredibly powerful way to transform anger into compassion. It helps us reclaim our own peace and strengthen our relationships. By bringing these teachings into our daily lives, we can actually break free from the cycle of anger and create a much more peaceful and fulfilling existence. Han's message is crystal clear. Anger is not the enemy. It's a teacher, guiding us towards deeper self-awareness and emotional resilience. Which just leaves us with one final question to think about.